Hi, I want to talk to you about drawing trees. Trees are quite an important part of my work and I deal with them quite a lot. So when I'm drawing a tree, I'm trying to reach a balance between what I want artistically and the tree being believable. So I spend a lot of time staring at trees, which is always a good thing, I think, just to see why a silver birch is different from an oak tree, is different from a willow. And a lot of that's to do with, negative space actually. It's to do with the way the branches leave the trunk and the spaces in between, stuff like that. So here in this drawing, which is the drawing for the Linocut that I'm going to show you, you can see this is actually about movement. This is all about the air and the wind blowing through it. But birches come up and are quite whippy at the top. So I'm looking here at that kind of almost angular shape as the tree branches are moving in the wind. So that's very, very different from this drawing of an oak tree in this piece of work. And here you can see the oak, they tend to have rather fat branches that trail off quite short. So here you can see this drawing. Again, I'm looking at the negative shapes and how that's quite curvy, how the branches leave the trunk and split up. Also on this one, I'm working with foliage, and foliage for trees can be a bit tricky because you can kind of get lost in all the individual little leaves. So here what I've done is, again, I'm looking at negative space, the edges of the foliage. So when I'm drawing all these itty bitty little curvy edges, but I'm not worrying about the interior mass too much. So that's quite a useful approach. Even if you go on to put a bit more detail into the central bits, start with the outline and then you can work your way in if you want to. So that's that kind of drawing. In this drawing here, very, very different approach. This is very stylised. This was a Japanese woodblock print that I did some time ago. And here the tree is almost abstracted. I mean, they quite often go in for rather beautiful manipulation of trees in Japan. So I wanted to get that feeling that man's hand might have been on these trees. So you can see here, very, very stylised shape of this tree, combined, the sort of quite angular, and then there's this curvy sort of pine tree here to balance it. So in this one I'm playing with shapes in a more abstract way. And finally, here's a picture, a drawing for some woodblocks that I'm doing of the Yorkshire moors, which are quite different from my usual way of working. And here you can see the trees are almost kind of, I wouldn't say cartoony, but they're very, very stylised indeed. And I've made them very basic forms, and I'll develop them when I do the print. So there are very different ways of looking at trees, but always remember that they have got to be believable. So a lot of time in the countryside spent mindlessly looking at different trees is time well spent when we're all allowed out again. So I'll catch up with you again soon, and thanks very much for watching.